Hello everyone, GoldenNova here. This month, our first Quasar Commander, and yes, there's two now, I actually did a lot of changes on the Patreon if you want to go check that out, has asked for something a little less, orthodox. While I've covered archetypes that many would argue aren't archetypes, key examples being digital bugs and guard dragons never actually referring to themselves in their card text, but when you've got a bunch of cards sharing a pretty unique title as part of their names, that's archetype enough for me. These ones are, little different. Premiering as an unsummonable fusion monster in the September 2003 promo tins, before its primary cards were finally released in the October 2003 core set Magician's Force, which I guess makes this a 20th anniversary special, the XYZ group of Light Machine Union monsters would be revealed, which would not only spin off into two other letters-based themes, but would hint at the existence of XYZ Monsters before even Synchro was released. How's that for playing the long game? Collectively, these are known by the player base as either the Light Unions or the A to Z Monsters, which is about as close as we're gonna get to a feasible name, and have existed both as meme-worthy payoffs nestled into goofy brews to actually legit tournament threats. So let's break out all of our transforming toys, check the manuals to see how they all fit together, then find out if there are any extra figures we can smash together to make the most fearsome Bionicle of all time! Everyone, it's time for A to Z Explained. Today's episode is brought to you by my lovely patrons and the fine people over at Dragon Shield. If you want to protect your cards with the strongest scales on the market that even come with their own lore while supporting the channel, use my affiliate link in the description. So, what's the deal with the A to Zs? Well, they're a series of level 4 light machine monsters, many of which are also unions. That's right, it's not just the workforce that's seeing an uptick in union activity, it's also happening in Yu-Gi-Oh! It's a fairly rare ability that only shows up on 37 of the game's monsters, so now is a pretty good time for a refresher on how they work. Once per turn, you can equip the union monster to another monster, and it'll provide any specifics of what it can be equipped to if it has any at that point, or while it's being treated as an equipped card, you can special summon it in attack position. It generally confers some kind of bonus, but they also have an effect where, if the equipped monster would be destroyed by a battle or card effect, the union monster is destroyed instead. This is mandatory and gives off the vibe of union monsters being these extra suits of armor or an extension of the wielder that protects it when things go wrong. And we actually see the A to Z monsters epitomize that with their big payoff, their fusions. And not just any kind of fusion, contact fusion. That's right, predating even Neospacians. These unions had the ability to banish themselves from the field to call forth their extra deck counterparts, which would take the shape of what their combined forms would look like. And based on the wordings of these fusions, you could even use union monsters that are being treated as equip spells as material for those summons, and that's just really flavorful. For this video, we'll be covering the primary groups in chronological order, going from XYZ, VW, then ABC, covering their fusions as they become relevant, because as more of these themes get introduced, the more convoluted ways we get to see them combined together. Then we'll round things out with general union support before covering tech picks and the Nova scale. Starting us off, we have our initial trio, X Head Cannon, Y Dragon Head, and Z Metal Tank. X has 1800 attack and 1500 defense, and is one of our normal monsters, which at least makes it a neat unexpected die target. Y Dragon Head has 1500 attack and 1600 defense, and it can union with X Head Cannon, giving it an extra 400 attack and defense. Then we have Z Metal Tank, which has 1500 attack and 1300 defense, can union with X Head Cannon or Y Dragon Head, giving the equipped monster a 600 attack and defense boost. Other than that, they don't really have any impactful effects. But what we can do is trade in the protection offered by being a union monster for one of our fusions. Each of them are level 6 and are made by banishing the cards you control that are listed as fusion material from your field. And once again, because it checks for cards, not monsters, you'll be able to banish them even if they're being treated as equipped cards. And a cool detail, the fusions will have the exact same attack and defense stats as the associated union pair while they're combined, which is a nice touch. They also have an odd summoning condition where they must first be special summoned from the extra deck using contact fusion, but then goes on to say you can't special summon them from the graveyard. So if you banish the fusion, I guess it's fair game to bring back. It's weird. Anyway, XY Dragon Cannon has 2200 attack and 1900 defense, requiring X-Head Cannon and Y Dragon Head as material. And it lets you discard a card, then target a face-up spell or trap card your opponent controls and destroy that target. And really, that's what I've been wanting all along. A monster that turns my cards in hand into life point cost-free twisters. XZ Tank Cannon has 2400 attack and 2100 defense, and requires X-Head Cannon and Z Metal Tank as material, and lets you discard a card to target a face-down spell or trap card your opponent controls and destroy that target. Which makes it slightly better than XY in terms of getting rid of battle traps, but also worse because if the targeted card gets flipped, it no longer falls under the targeting conditions, and because it has to destroy that target, not that card, it will fizzle. Ouch. YZ Tank Dragon has 2100 attack and 2200 defense, requiring Y Dragon Head and Z Metal Tank as material, and can discard a card, then target a face-down monster your opponent controls and destroy it. Which, unless your opponent is already on the defensive or is actually playing crawlers, this isn't going to be much help. The real payoff here is going to be the combination of all three XYZ Dragon Cannon, the level 8 fusion that has 2800 attack and 2600 defense, and it lets you discard a card, then target a card your opponent controls and destroy that target. Now this is what I'm talking about. It's got a great stat line and an impressive effect, especially for the time. I mean, it's even kind of impressive now, because you might have noticed that it doesn't have an activation restriction. Yeah, not even a soft once per turn. As long as you have cards in hand, you can keep trading them in for removal, and that's grand. Now, to be fair, that is a trait all these fusion monsters have had so far, but it's never been better than it is right here. The only issue is that it's not super easy to get all three of these onto the board, at least not during the initial years. Nowadays, you'll find a lot more tools are available to help with summoning this, so feel free to leverage its outrageous power against your opponent and show them what happens when you combine the power of fusion with XYZ, but not the overlaying type. Now, the previous cards were all part of Seto Kaiba's arsenal, but now we're going to move on to the cards that were added by his successor in GX, Chaz Princeton, who added a couple more mechs to the base. V Tiger Jet is a normal monster with 1600 attack and 1800 defense, and it pairs with W Wing Catapult, which has 1300 attack and 1500 defense, who can only union with V Tiger Jet, giving it a 400 attack and defense boost. And when contact fuse together, they form VW Tiger Catapult, a level 6 fusion monster with 2000 attack and 2100 defense, which is 100 less defense than their union combination has. Ooh, I don't like that. It can also discard a card, then target a monster your opponent controls and change its battle position. So now you get to choose the weakest position for your opponent's monsters, or, since it doesn't specify the monster has to be face up, flip up any face down monsters they have to get a better read on their field. It's not direct removal like the last contact fusions, but does have its uses, except against links, in which case it does nothing. But once again, the real payoff comes when you combine even further. Take that VW Tiger Catapult and a complete XYZ Dragon Cannon, contact fuse them together, and you get VW XYZ Dragon Catapult Cannon, a level 8 fusion monster with 3000 attack and 2800 defense, and once per turn, you can target a card your opponent controls and banish it. Not only that, but when this card declares an attack on an opponent's monster, you can target the monster it's attacking and change its battle position. And on top of that, it also keeps flip effect from being activated. Sadly, the removal effect now comes with a once per turn, but banishing removal is pretty hard to pass up, and it even lacks the can't be special summoned from the grave condition, so you can actually revive this if it goes away. How sweet is that? But what if I told you that it gets even sweeter? That's right, despite everything, we've not yet even seen the pinnacle of what machine combination is capable of. That's because we can Chaz it up even further, forming Armed Dragon Catapult Cannon, a level 10 fusion monster with 3500 attack and 3000 defense, and must first be special summoned from the extra deck during a duel in which you special summoned both VW XYZ Dragon Catapult Cannon and Armed Dragon level 7 by banishing them from your field and or grave. While on the field, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects with the same name as any banished card. And once per turn, during your opponent's turn as a quick effect, you can banish a card from your deck or extra deck face up to banish all cards your opponent controls and is in their grave. We've seen this monstrosity in some other explained videos, but it bears repeating, this card is a monster. And if you're allowed to go to your opponent's draw phase, this might as well just read win the game. And for all the work you have to go through to make this, you kinda deserve it. While the burden of making this has gotten lighter ever since the Ojama armed dragon support dropped, this is still a hefty build around that needs a ridiculous amount of bricks to function. But those of you daring enough to try have my blessing. Pull this off, and your opponent will know that, even without any actual dragons, A to Z is armed to the teeth. Our next group covers the cards released for the Kaiba structure deck, made to mirror a similar one for Yugi. But instead of Dark Magician and Blue Eyes, they focused on their lesser-known themes, the Magnet Warriors and the Light Union Monsters. Ooh, I hope I get to do Magnet Warriors soon. Our first main deck entry is A Assault Core. It has 1900 attack and 200 defense, and it can union onto any Light Machine monster, and the equipped monster is unaffected by your opponent's monster effects, except its own, which seems weird, but is probably a little addendum that guards against certain edge cases. It also has the first instance of a floating effect among our cards. If this card is sent from the field to the grave, you can add one other Union monster from your grave to your hand. But hold on to your socks, because it's not the only one. B Buster Drake has 1500 attack and 1800 defense, also unions with any light machine, and makes the equipped monster unaffected by your opponent's spell effects, and also if sent from the field to the graveyard, adds a Union monster from your deck to your hand. This trio is rounded out by C Crush Wyvern, which has 1200 attack and 2000 defense, is also unionable with light machines, keeps the monster it's equipped to from being affected by your opponent's trap effects, and if sent from the field to the graveyard, special summons a Union monster from your hand. This forms an incredible trio of monsters that do a whole bunch of stuff. Not only do they provide some absolutely magnificent protections which can be tailored towards any particular matchup, the ability to search, recover, and field unions from any walk of life means it has great synergy with other Union cards, which it can't always say. Throw in advantageous levels, typing, and attribute, and you've got a recipe for success, and their payoff more than proves it. ABC Dragon Buster is a level 8 fusion monster with 3000 attack and 2800 defense, requiring A Assault Core, B Buster Drake, and C Crush Wyvern as material. And you special summon this by banishing those monsters that you control and or are in your grave. Once per turn as a quick effect, you can discard a card, then target any card on the field and banish it, and during your opponent's turn as a quick effect, you can tribute this card, then target 3 of your banished Light Machine Union monsters with different names and special summon them. Wow, this card is outrageous! It's almost like XYZ Dragon Catapult Cannon, but manages to be even better. The Banish is now at quick effect speed, lets you use material from your grave so you don't have to actually field everything, and can then break apart into its component pieces to be used for something later. This means you can use those component Union monsters for any other kind of summon, like getting an Xyz or nowadays a Link monster, before getting to cash in to pair those monsters with Dragon Buster. A common practice would then be to keep the fusion around for your opponent's turn, then at the last allowable second, trade it out for those banished Unions. Then, on your turn, you get them all back into the grave by using them for particular summons before making another Dragon Buster. And the entire time, you were accruing value because they all had floating effects that would trigger from this. Well, not when being detached as Xyz material because that's not on the field, but you get my point. And let's not forget that it's got a must first be summoned clause, but no other restrictions, meaning you can reborn this for immediate value. So you can see how this was a powerhouse of design, even before Lynx gave this core of monsters even more options to work with. Because of that, it's had its fair share of time on the FNL list, but is currently back and at full copies. It has got to be one of the most consistently successful monsters in this entire video, but we're actually not even finished yet, because now we've got to tie everything together. See, alongside ABC in that Kaiba structure deck, there was another boss you could access if you wanted to invest a whole lot in the Union pool. A to Z Dragon Buster Cannon, a level 10 fusion monster with 4000 attack and defense, and must be special summoned from your extra deck by banishing cards you control with the original name of its material and cannot be special summoned by other ways. During either player's turn, when your opponent activates a spell card, trap card, or monster effect, you can discard a card to negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. And during either player's turn, you can banish this card, then target one each of your banished ABC Dragon Buster and XYZ Dragon Cannon, and special summon them. Like XYZ, this also lacks a once per turn on its effect, so as long as you have cards in hand, you've got negates. It's like a Gladiator Beast Heraclinos in that way, but way, way better. The downside is that there isn't really a way to cheat this into play. If you want to access it, you have to be playing the XYZ core, and that's a lot of bricks for a single deck. This means you're going to want to pair this with the Ojama engine to turbo out the material, but sadly, if you're going to commit like this, Armed Dragon Catapult Cannon is a way stronger card that makes for a better focus. But as tournament results used to show, you're better off just playing the color-coordinated trio and making strong, efficient plays throughout. Utilize their effects enough and winning will be easy as ABC. Now, that being said, we're not entirely done yet. There are some other cards I would argue are part of our core game plan. Union Driver is a level 5 light machine union monster with 2100 attack and 1000 defense, and can union any monster you control. While equipped to a monster, you can banish this equipped card to equip a level 4 or lower appropriate union monster from your deck to the card this was equipped to. This is meant to work with our effects that can directly equip a union to our monsters to speed things up. Now, on the surface, that seems a bit strange. If we're already using an effect to directly equip, then why not just get the card you want in the end and cut out the middleman? And that's because Union Driver is here to work around some restrictions. One of the big limiting factors with unions is that they can only equip or special summon themselves from being equipped once per turn, and it can't do so multiple times in a single turn. And many of our popular effects that do this direct equipping come with a restriction to keep you from special summoning that monster to stay in line with that. But Union Driver is special because it has no such restriction, letting you grab whatever you want, then immediately special summoning it. This is useful especially in the case of the ABC group, as this means more material for our other summons, i.e. links, before making Dragon Buster. The only real issue here is that this is a self-driving car, and honestly, a vehicle whose whole point is to immediately vanish into thin air to be replaced by a giant dragon mech seems questionable, at best. It might sound cool to have one, but just remember that your license probably doesn't cover machines of war. Union Carrier is a Link 2 light machine monster with 1000 attack, requiring any 2 monsters with the same type or attribute as material, and cannot be used as Link material the turn it's Link summoned. You can target a face-up monster you control and equip a monster to it from your hand or deck with its same original type or attribute. The equipped monster gains 1000 attack, and if you equip that monster from the deck, you cannot special summon monsters with that equipped card's name for the rest of the turn. Now, notice how nowhere does this card say Union, except the name. It works great with them, but found a home in basically everything once it was released, as it unlocked some truly ridiculous pieces of card design that I don't think were ever meant to exist, and broke them like a Kit Kat bar. Wind-Winged Beast decks would run this with Apex Avian, equipping it with Thunderbird. This would initiate the infinite negate loop because you could return the equipped Thunderbird, which would in turn proc its own special summon. Put that together with Avramax and you had a bit of a problem. Equipping it even meant that you couldn't just run over the bird without baiting out one negate. Decks that wanted another Foolish Burial would make Union Carrier, equip a monster that wanted to go to the grave to some other monster we had on board, then link that equipped monster off for another to get more value. But perhaps the most infamous were the Buster Locks. If you had a board that ended on either a Dark or Dragon monster, which I know is rare considering they're the most popular type and attribute in the game, you could equip that monster with Dragon Buster Destruction Sword, locking your opponent out of the extra deck while providing the equipped monster with a big 1000 attack boost. And you could get away with this because, while the Buster Swords could only equip to Buster Bladers using their own effect, they didn't specify they had to be equipped via their own effect to apply their bonus. This was more than enough justification to hit this card on the FNL list, where it currently sits at Forbidden to this day. Crying shame too, because despite everything, it is an interesting piece of card design. But sometimes you get a little too ambitious, you get taken to FNL jail, and now you have a bunch of decks that just don't work. Truly, this Link monster was carrying an entire format. Union Hanger is a field spell card that, when activated, adds a Light Machine Union monster from your deck to your hand. And once per turn, if any number of Light Machine Union monsters are normal or special summoned to your field, except during the damage step, you can target one of those monsters and equip an appropriate Light Machine Union monster with a different name from your deck to that monster. But the Union monster you equip cannot be special summoned this turn. This is the card that ties the whole modern concept of the A to Z deck together, getting you just about any member of the theme you could want while supplying them with an equipped union to boot. This means any of your 2 material contact fusions are a single summon away, while getting you a lot of progress towards your 3 material ones. And while the equipped monster cannot be special summoned that turn, that's where Union Driver comes in. it can tag out into another union that you can special summon, and now you have 2 material for a variety of purposes. Also, I've gotta say, I love that the unions have their own little houses they get to live and hang out in. It's kinda cute. XYZ Combine is a continuous spell card, and if your Light Machine Union monster card is banished, except during the damage step, you can special summon an X Head Cannon, Y Dragon Head, or Z Metal Tank from your deck, and you can return 1 fusion monster you control to the extra deck to special summon up to 2 of your banished monsters with different names from among X Head Cannon, Y Dragon Head, and Z Metal Tank. So you might have noticed that the ABC series has a pretty nice loop of summoning the boss monster using the 3 material, getting those material back by trading in the boss, then making another Dragon Buster using that new material. The rest of the cycles are not so lucky. When you banish monsters for YZ or YX or whatever, they're just gone. That's where XYZ Combine comes in, letting you trade any of your 2 material contacts for its material back, while also helping you to pull out another member of the team. In fact, if you have Union Hanger and this card, you can make XYZ Dragon Cannon. Just activate Hanger, get Y Dragon, normal summon it, and then use Hanger to equip Z Tank. Contact them into YZ, and now that you've banished a Light Machine Union monster to make it, special summon X Cannon from your deck. Then use Combine's second effect to turn YZ into its component parts, and voila! You've got X, Y, and Z on the board ready to banish for XYZ Dragon Cannon. This is a great combo enabler and can even help with making A to Z Dragon Buster Cannon by getting you the material for XYZ while you build ABC. And that's a synergy you can alpha bet on. Union Scramble is a normal trap card that targets up to 3 of your banished Light Machine normal and or Light Machine Union monsters and special summons them. And during either player's turn, except the turn this card was sent to the grave, you can banish this card from your grave, then target one of your banished Light Machine normal or Light Machine Union monsters and return it to the hand. This works kind of like XYZ Combine, but can be used as a recovery or extender tool once you've set up the banished zone, while also letting you recycle one back to your hand on a later turn. It's not enough to help the older cards see play, but a welcome tool to help them play a bit smoother for the ones who love playing them. And I hate to give such a lukewarm take on a card like this, because I just know it's gonna scramble to egg on some viewers. XYZ Hyper Cannon is a continuous trap card, and you must control either XYZ Dragon Cannon or a fusion monster that lists that card as material to activate its effects, and has a different effect depending on whose turn it is. If it's your turn, you can target one of your banished Union monsters and place it on the bottom of your deck, and if you do, draw a card. If it's your opponent's turn, you can discard any number of cards, then target the same number of cards your opponent controls and destroy those targets. This is another card that's gonna have a very strong split opinion on it. If you're looking to play the base XYZ cards, this is great. It gives you some interaction on your opponent's turn and lets you recycle your banished unions for a draw to refill your hand and give you more ammo. If you play anything else, Dragon Buster's effect is gonna do you just fine for a much lower investment. True, ABC only hits a single card, but with banishing removal at quick effect speed, 1 is oftentimes more than enough. It's a rad looking card, and I'm sure it'll make a speed duelist very happy someday, but for now, any praise for Hyper Cannon is hyperbole. Alright, so that's all the A to Z cards, but what do we do with them? Well, it depends on what branch you're going to go down. If you're running ABC, then you'll want to load your deck with generic powerful monsters to leverage while pairing them up with a Banishing Trident, while loading up your main deck with a ton of enablers. If it's the XYZ version you want to play, we're going to have to load up on Brick City to turbo out our army. Utilizing some powerful infrastructure to get them all out, hope we avoid our opponent's interaction, then win the game upon summoning the game's arguably most powerful fusion monster. So what can we play to help them out? First, we're gonna need those generic Link monsters. The Nightmares are a given, not only being easily accessible, but lets you pitch a card for their effects, which could in fact turbo out your ABC pieces to get to Dragon Buster that much quicker. And when it comes to using a freshly summoned set of cards, Appaloosa and Saryuja Skulldread make for great payoffs. Summon one differently named monster with them, and you can get a format of both of them for some wild advantage. But if you're stuck on just those 3 material, you can overlay 2 into Gear Gigant X for a search, then link it and the remaining Union monster into SP Little Knight. Platinum Gadget is also pretty cool for getting more of your machines out of your hand, though remember you cannot use Platinum Gadget as link material the turn you Link summon it, so it's a tad less suited for that mission. Revolution Synchron is going to be a huge boon to the deck. You get to sync off any of your unions into a level 7, and if you've kept an eye on combo theories over the past year, you know that a prime target is going to be Ancient Fairy Dragon. That's right, we're taking the Emperor Stove approach to ABC. If you combine A to Z with another deck that uses a powerful field spell, hint, Dragon's Ravine discards a card to get Destrudo in the grave, which just turns anything into AFD, you can have the Signer Dragon pivot to another, summon a monster out of your hand, and then Revolution Synchron can come back glow up bulb style to make Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon to help ward off hand traps. It's a bit of a doozy. If we're going the XYZ route, you're gonna need some help from the game's most annoying creatures, the Ojamas. Their support that goes along with Armed Dragon trades these little puke stains for monsters listed on Light Machine Fusion Monsters. So if you have 3 in rotation, you can turbo out X Head, Y Dragon, and Z Tank. Then take those banished Ojamas and shuffle them back for a draw. Do that again with V Tiger and W Wing and you're on your way to a pretty hefty board breaker. But don't ignore their applications in ABC. If you're feeling greedy, you can use the same tactic to get Core, Drake, and Wyvern into play. And they're actually not terrible includes. Pitching Oja Magic with Dragon Buster does get you a fresh set of yellow, green, and black, getting you more advantage for anything that you can use level 2 monsters for. And while none of them have any beneficial effects, if you pitch Ojama Pink, it is basically a Dark World Dealings to help you dig for more cards and potentially activate more discard effects. There's also a number of Union support cards that help this theme in particular, but I wouldn't necessarily call them part of the archetype. Oil Man only equips to machines and draws you a card when the equipped monster destroys another in battle, so if you want to be greedy, this superhero of the auto department is your go-to. Heavy Mech Support Armor gets you back a Union from your grave when summoned, which allows you to get back your spent A to Z pieces that haven't been banished yet, and any machine you equip this to gets targeting protection, which is pretty saucy. You could also run Heavy Mech Support Platform, but it's nowhere near as useful. And while Unauthorized Reactivation was introduced alongside Machina, it just grabs a machine union and slaps it onto one of your machines. So if your opponent threatens the Nibiru, you can attach Assault Core onto one of your monsters out of nowhere to avoid the consequences. And if you want to access the Synchro Pool, Torque Tune Gear turns the monster it's equipped to into a tuner, on top of just being a level 1 tuner itself, so it kind of modulates levels. As for a silly tech pick, Cyber Dragon isn't a bad idea, if only for the fact that you can also gain access to Cyber Repair Plant, which can search any light machine monster out of your deck once it's online. Then, if you need help with closing out a game, these Mecha Sneckies have all the tools you need to pull off an OTK. And hitting your opponent with a 5600 attack Cyber Twin Dragon that's unaffected by trap effects is gonna be pretty funny. Alright, so that's all the info I have about the A to Z cards, but how do they stack up against the Nova scale? Novelty. It's hard to get more original than this. As part of the very first series of Union monsters, not only did they pioneer a new mechanic, they also got ahead of the pack with probably the best version of it, leveraging our pairs of monsters to make nasty fusion deck threats without even needing polymerization. And as time went on, more innovations to the formula kept on cropping up, to the usage of double fusion monsters to make an even bigger fusion, to using material from the grave so it was more economical. So these cards get an enthusiastic 5 out of 5 in this category from me. Objectivity. That being said, Dragon Buster was probably a little too innovative. While its structured X status meant it was within easy reach for many duelists, its ability to act as powerful, proactive spot removal while evading consequences made it a huge threat. Heck, the fact that it frequently had access to the rank 4 engine, which not only expanded its options, but also had the ability to recycle Dragon Buster with Daigusto Emerald, was more than enough to put it over the top. However, I'm hard-pressed to say that, at present, these cards do as good or a better job of modern themes that want to accomplish something similar, so I feel like a 4 in objectivity is warranted here. Versatility. Despite its core cards working solely with Light Machine Union monsters, a very narrow selection of cards, you can get away with running this in a lot of decks. While XYZ does really need a dedicated shell to work properly, a suite of 3 hanger, 2 of each ABC, and a Union driver to help turbo everything out is really all you need. So if your deck has 10 free slots to work with, you can get what amounts to 2 free material to use for whatever summon 2 level 4 light monsters can provide, as well as a giant monster that spits out banishing removal removal that can turn into even more material later. It's actually kind of impressive, and while it doesn't go with everything, I have no problem giving this a 4 in versatility. Awesomeness. Even from the other side of the table, watching A to Z do its thing is pretty neat, and it's a blast to pilot. It's strong, but not necessarily in an oppressive way, so I can't bring myself to give it anything but a 5, meaning A to Zs are getting a pretty wild 18 out of 20 on the Nova scale. And that's all I have to say about A to Z. It's a strong amalgam of like-minded cards more than it is an archetype, but like a very extroverted Shaddoll monster, archetypes are a social construct, so bending the phrase ain't too bad. And it certainly helps that they have a cool playstyle that may draw from more established design, but ends with cards that tickle that section of my brain that love it when toys combine together. Sure, branching out into other summoning methods may go against the spirit of these cards, but nothing said we had to abide by the letter of the law. But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Are these Light Machine Union monsters getting a fair deal, or are they just gonna strike out? And which one's your favorite? For me, it's X-Head Cannon. Something about the over-designed torso terminating into a floaty orb just really gets me. Let me know in the comments, and if you haven't already, please make sure to like the video, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and share this video with somebody you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode was brought to you in part by Dragon Shield. When you want to protect your cards with the power of dragon scales, get some sweet lore for them, and support the channel, check out my link in the description to get started. Today's episode is also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commander Frankie, Nebula Navigator's 3rd Dynasty, Ada Basilisk, Adam Zajdel, Andrew Newman, Kane Senpai, Chibi Gohan, Christopher Fuss, Clockswork, Danny Bound, Dark Dragon X830, Eric, Aaron the World Breaker, Garland Chaos, Genesis Yu-Gi-Oh!, Green Knight, Great Big Pillock, Hairbear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Howling Zangetsu, Hydrocraft 135, Iron Zero, Iskander 711, Mana Charge, Marion James E. Picata, Mega Combi, Millennia Asta, Molly Renata, Nathan Vig, Natiel Lee Alexander, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Rebel King Lucifer, RJ the Jank Monarch, Sammy Haim, Sir Knight JCB, Sky Buster Leo, The Wizard Moose, URTV 667 and Xander Wolfensberger, Cosmic Crusaders Almento 5010, A Random Pup, Ariel Kersey, Beluga Masta, Blue Gem, Chaz Ghost, Corbinisms, Drachenwald, Drake and SpongeBob be like you used to call me on your cell phone, Dripfed Tar, Eki Bullock, Emily, Eva Padilla, Hike Boyagian, Herbal D, Inblink, Jester Designs, Kale the Dragon, Carp, Kendall Wishmeyer, Kevon Public, King Scarlet Yu-Gi-Oh!, Lemon Yu-Gi-Oh!, Lord Whoop-De-Doo, Manga Pages, Matt Simmons, Michael Shimabukuro, Nitromo, Shizuki Nijimura, Sophie, apparently, Stephen Williamson, Taylor Seymour, The Legendary Raven, Tucker Ordorn, Venusian Teapot, and Zaldreka, as well as the lovely Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to help me in my quest to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, watch my videos early, participate in monthly custom card reviews, and be a part of these credits, I'd very much appreciate it if you checked out my link in the description and considered joining, as every pledge helps make the channel that much better and helps make all this a little more stable. And if you'd like to see another deck that focuses on equipping its own monsters for value, why don't you check out this video I made covering Plunder Patrol. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye. And have existed as both meme-worthy payoffs nestled into groovy brews. Got those groovy brewing! While getting you a lot of progress. A lot of progress has been made here today.